People have called the Santa Cruz Mountains home for millennia. Their stories and their relationship to the environment are written in the land, layers of history that remain today.
One of the things that I love the most about this is the sense of discovery, that every time we come out, still even, we find new things that we didn't know about before, that we piece together from those layers of history.
Of the more than 65,000 acres that Midpen has purchased, restored, and made available to the public, much of it, when acquired, was heavily impacted by us humans and far from pristine.
Midpen's trying to balance, returning the site to kind of its natural element, but also maintaining elements of the history and trying to interpret that to the public.
That's especially true here on Mount Umunhum. With its remnant radar tower perched high atop, it's a familiar landmark for South Bay residents, but its history is largely unknown.
This is a sacred mountain. And this is where our people would come to pray. They would make sojourns to come up to this hill so that they could be closer to the Creator.
This was the way for millennia. But beginning with the arrival of Spanish missionaries in the late 18th century and continuing through most of the 20th century, members of the Umunhum tribal band were not allowed access to this mountaintop and were cut off from the center of their spiritual life.
Well, the times when Mount was not available to us as a sacred site, it was a sign of just great loss, of great sadness.
Decades later, during the Cold War, Mount was the site of the Almondon Air Force Station, a radar facility eyeing the sky for potentially hostile aircraft. It was like a small city, home to personnel and their families.
There was a bowling alley here, there was a swimming pool, and then all the associated military infrastructure that goes along with that. And they wanted to just keep all the families up here and happy.
After the air station closed in 1980, the infrastructure fell into disrepair, and nature began reclaiming the land.
When we first came up here as planners and looked around, then it was like, wow, there were 88 structures up here, and they were all decrepit.
Midpen acquired the property in 1986, and after decades of developing a new vision for the land, began the process of tearing down decrepit buildings, rebuilding the mountaintop, and returning the mountain to a more natural state. Reconnecting this summit with its traditional stewards was also part of the vision, and a unique partnership with the Umunhum was established.
We were invited to meet with the Mid-Peninsula Open Space folks and to talk about what our interests and goals were for up here. And because our people used it for prayer, that's what we requested of them.
To help honor this request, Midpen built a stone circle for ceremony and prayer.
We danced as our ancestors danced. The songs we sang are the same songs that our ancestors sang. They're recognized by many tribes as being ancient songs. They're very old. And we still carry them with us today, and that's what we sang up here for the first time in 200 years. That was just a very powerful, powerful day for us. Having an opportunity to come here and look at these views and know that we were walking the lands that our ancestors walked, and to see the views that our ancestors looked at, and knowing that we were closer to the Creator. Oh, that was just an overwhelming feeling of joy and happiness.
The Umunhum want to share with us a profound relationship we all can have. And for Midpen, preserving both the human and natural history of this land is an important part of its mission.
Mount Umunhum Summit is a perfect example of what Midpen's mission is all about. It's to protect the land in the first place, restore it, and then provide it free of charge for low-intensity recreation and enjoyment.
The restored peak was open to the public in 2017, and Midpen invites all of us to soak in the stunning views, learn about the mountain's history, and discover this magical mountain on newly constructed trails or by a road accessible to all. A few miles to the north and a couple of thousand feet below sits Bear Creek Redwoods, another site with a rich history and inviting future.
This site is amazing in how it balances both the natural landscape as well as the man-made landscape. Every brick that you see out here and every structure that's still standing tells a story.
Located just minutes away from San Jose, 1,400-acre Bear Creek Redwoods has trails, towering redwoods, and remnants of the land's rich human history.
Midpen hired us back in 2017 to record and evaluate the historical significance of a bunch of resources at Bear Creek Redwoods, and we probably documented 30, 35 archaeological sites throughout the preserve.
A team of archaeologists has been painstakingly sifting through the layers of history and revealing the remains of decades of human occupation.
In the mid-19th century, it was a sawmill, and then from the 1880s to 1930s, a series of wealthy businessmen settled here as like a rural retreat.
During the Great Depression, the land was sold to the Jesuits, who established Alma College, their first seminary on the West Coast. In the 1960s, the college closed, and developers dreamed of building a golf course and luxury homes. But the public opposed the plans, and Midpen and its partners were able to purchase the property and preserve it as open space. After years of cleanup and restoration, Bear Creek Redwoods was finally opened to the public in 2017. And happily, visitors, both human and wild, are finally coming back.
So this is a rough-skinned newt, one of the native newt amphibian species that we find here.
Also found here are several species of bats, making a comeback, which provide valuable benefits for both the ecosystem and us.
They're out there every night catching sometimes thousands of insects, including things like mosquitoes that I know a lot of people don't like, as well as agricultural pests. So they're doing us a tremendous service.
To encourage bats to roost here, temporary structures have been installed, designed by local bat experts and built by Midpen, structures that have proven to be very successful.
We call them the bat sheds. And they're specifically designed to house multiple species of bats. The first few years of monitoring out here, we would only get a handful of bats coming out of these structures. And in the last few years, we've had several hundred bats coming out.
Along with these temporary structures, Midpen has also retrofitted an old carport here that has enticed a very rare species of bat to repopulate the area.
There's a bat, little Myotis. Hello, friend. You can see some of the guano in the corner where those bats have been hanging.
This is the species that we were hoping to get in here, which is the Townsend's big-eared bat, and I'm very happy to see it. Those ears they get me every time. They're so great.
Finding this solitary bat indicates this structure may become a valuable roost for more Townsend's bats, a magnificent sign for the future of these important critters. The stories of Bear Creek Redwoods and Mount Umunhum are still evolving. Thankfully, the latest chapters are being written carefully and thoughtfully by the folks at Midpen, to the benefit of all of us.